My name is Vanessa Carter. I am 35 years old, and for many years, I truly believed that I had built a peaceful and honest life with the man I loved, the kind of life that felt simple, warm, and strong enough to survive anything. My husband's name is Daniel Carter. He is 37 years old, and together we have one son named Ethan, who is 8 years old and has always been the center of our world. The little heart that made our home feel alive even on the most ordinary days. Daniel and I had been married for 11 years, and although our life was not perfect, I believed it was real because we had built it through routine, sacrifice, shared responsibilities, and the kind of quiet love that grows stronger over time. That is why I never imagined that one ordinary night could destroy the trust one had spent years giving so freely. It happened on a Saturday evening when Daniel told me he was going out to dinner with some old college friends because one of them had come back to town after many years. And since he said it so casually and naturally, I had no reason to doubt him or suspect that anything was wrong. Before leaving, he kissed my forehead and told me not to wait up because he might come home late, and I simply smiled and told him to enjoy himself, completely unaware that those normal little words would become unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. That night, after putting Ethan to bed and spending some quiet time alone in the living room, I sent Daniel a message around 11:30 asking if he was okay, and he replied that he was still with his friends and would come home soon, so I trusted him and went to bed without thinking much about it. But Daniel did not come home until 2 in the morning, and when he finally walked into our bedroom, the first thing I noticed was the smell of alcohol. When I asked if he was okay, he said he was just tired, but I could feel almost immediately that something was wrong, because sometimes a woman senses the truth before she is ready to hear it. The next morning, Daniel was unusually quiet, and while Ethan happily talked during breakfast, Daniel barely touched his coffee or looked me in the eyes. And the silence around him felt so unnatural that I finally asked him what had happened the night before. At first, he said nothing had happened, but when I told him not to lie to me, he lowered his eyes, took a long breath, and said the words that changed everything. "Vanessa, I need to tell you something." My heart immediately began to race, and after a few painful seconds of silence, he finally admitted that his ex-girlfriend had been at the dinner, that they had talked, that they had been drinking, and then, after hesitating in a way that made me feel sick, he confessed that she had kissed him. I stood up so quickly that my chair almost fell, and when I asked him what he had done, he stayed silent for just long enough to tell me the truth before he even spoke it. Then, in a voice full of shame, he said, "I kissed her back." In that moment, it felt as though my entire world had collapsed in front of me, because I was not just hearing about one stupid kiss. I was hearing the sound of 11 years of trust breaking all at once. I could not even fully explain the pain I felt in that moment, because it was not only sadness, but also humiliation, anger, disbelief, heartbreak, and the unbearable realization that the man I had loved and trusted most had chosen to betray me in one careless night. Daniel kept apologizing and saying it was a mistake, that he had been drunk and had not been thinking clearly, but his excuses only made me angrier. Because alcohol does not create betrayal, it only reveals weakness that already exists. I told him to leave the house immediately, and although he begged me to calm down and listen to him, I was too hurt to hear anything except the truth of what he had done. So I packed a bag for him with shaking hands and told him to go before Ethan came downstairs and saw the destruction he had caused. After he left, I collapsed onto the floor and cried harder than I ever had in my life, because there is a very specific kind of pain that comes from realizing the person who made you feel safe is also the one who broke you. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life, because every room in the house reminded me of him. Every silence felt heavier than the one before. And every time my phone lit up with another message from Daniel begging for forgiveness, my heart felt torn between love and anger in the most painful way. He kept sending messages saying he was sorry, that he loved me, that he had made the biggest mistake of his life, but I ignored them because I could not bear to read words that no longer felt trustworthy. Then his mother called me, and instead of comforting me, she tried to convince me that I should forgive him because all men make mistakes, and hearing that only made me stronger in my decision. Because I refused to teach my son that betrayal is something a woman should quietly accept in order to keep a family together. The hardest part of everything, however, was not Daniel's betrayal or even the loneliness that followed it. It was Ethan. It was hearing him ask why his father no longer lived at home, why Daddy was not there for breakfast, and whether Daddy still loved him. Because there is nothing more painful than trying to protect a child from a truth that has already shattered your own heart. I told him that sometimes adults make mistakes and need time to fix things, and when he asked me if his father still loved him, I held his face in my hands and promised him that yes. His father loved him very much, and that would never change. Eventually, I agreed to let Daniel see Ethan on weekends, because no matter how badly he had failed me as a husband, I could still see that he truly loved our son, and I refused to let my pain become something Ethan would carry unfairly. At first, every time Daniel came to pick Ethan up, I could barely look at him, because even seeing his face brought back the pain of that morning in the kitchen, but over time, I started noticing things I had not expected. He never missed a visit. He never arrived late. He never pressured me. He never tried to force his way back into my life through guilt or manipulation. Instead, he showed up quietly, patiently, and consistently, and little by little, I began to see that something in him had truly changed. He stopped drinking. He became calmer. He became more honest. He became more respectful. And most importantly, he stopped asking me to forget what he had done and started trying to become someone who would never do it again. One evening, after dropping Ethan off, Daniel asked if he could talk to me for a few minutes, and after a long silence, he finally said something that stayed in my heart. For a long time, he told me, I kept calling it one mistake because I didn't want to face what it really was, but it was not just a kiss. It was betrayal, selfishness, and disrespect, and I did that to the one person who trusted me most. For the first time since everything happened, his apology felt real. Not because it erased my pain, but because it no longer sounded like an excuse. Still, I did not forgive him immediately, and I certainly did not rush back into love. Because healing does not happen in one conversation, and trust does not return just because someone finally says the right words. But over the months that followed, we slowly began spending small amounts of time together as a family again, first through school events, then simple dinners, then quiet moments where we talked honestly for the first time in years, not only about what he had done, but also about everything we had ignored in our marriage long before that night. Little by little, I saw a version of Daniel that felt different from the man who had once hurt me so deeply, because he was no longer arrogant, careless, or emotionally lazy, but patient, humble, and willing to do the painful work of rebuilding something he had nearly destroyed. One evening, after Ethan had gone to sleep, Daniel looked at me with tired but sincere eyes and said, "If there is even the smallest place left for me in your heart, I want to spend the rest of my life honoring it." That sentence broke something open inside me, because despite all the pain, despite all the anger, the truth was that a part of me still loved him, not in the innocent way I had before, but in a deeper, sadder, more careful way. So I told him that if we ever tried again, it would not be because I had forgotten what he did, and it would not be because I was afraid to be alone, but only because he had shown me real change and because I was choosing him freely, not from weakness but from strength. He promised me that if I gave him another chance, he would spend every day proving that he deserved it, and for the first time in a very long time, I believed he meant it. Nearly a year after the night that broke us, Daniel moved back home. Not because I needed him, not because betrayal had become acceptable, and not because I had suddenly become soft. He came back because over many long and painful months, he had shown me with patience, honesty, humility, and consistency that some people really can change when they are forced to face the worst parts of themselves. Life was never exactly the same after that, because some pain leaves a mark forever, but our home slowly became warm again, filled once more with laughter, quiet peace, school mornings, family dinners, and the kind of honest love that feels stronger precisely because it has survived something real. I never forgot what happened, and I never pretended it did not matter. But I also learned that not every second chance is weakness, because sometimes choosing to forgive, after truth has been proven and change has been earned, can be one of the strongest choices a person ever makes. My name is Vanessa Carter. I am 35 years old, and I learned that love alone is never enough to save a marriage, because without honesty, respect, and trust, love becomes fragile. But I also learned that when truth finally enters the room, even broken hearts can sometimes find a way to heal. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any new content.